Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have the new featured location, Warrior Falls. And with this location, at the end of each turn, all of the cards are going to fight, and the lowest power card is going to be destroyed. Now, it's important to keep in mind that with this location, if you have two cards at the location, your opponent has none, your two cards are still going to fight, and the lowest power card is going to be destroyed. As a reminder, featured locations occur in 40% of games on the 2 days that it's featured, and so you want to build a deck with this location in mind, but you also don't necessarily need to fully commit to seeing this location every single game because it's only going to be in 40% of your games, which is more likely than normal, but it's not as much as a hot location. And so with this location, you really want to have a deck that operates well on its own, but can get additional benefit from the location. And today we're going to be covering my top 5 deck recommendations to try out today. Try these out, tweak them to, depending on what you're finding, adjust them to what fits for what you're seeing and what works best for the location. But these are my ideas going into the location that I think have a lot of promise. So the first deck that I recommend trying out is a Pool 1 deck. And in Pool 1, yes, you can go with some high power cards to try to make sure that you get some upside versus your opponent, you destroy your opponent's cards. But what if they have a higher power card than you do? We all know the feeling of investing into Hala only to have 3 or 4 of our powerful resources destroyed. At that point, it's almost an instant retreat. And so you want to keep that in mind, that putting cards into this location is inherently a risk. If your opponent somehow has a higher power card than you do, you run the risk of losing your resources that are going to be really valuable in making sure that you win this game and this location. And so what I recommend here is that for Pool 1, you run a Pool 1 Spectrum deck list. Now, I do have one gameplay footage of this. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. It was a Pool 1 through Pool 3 Spectrum ongoing deck list spotlight, and so it has some footage of this one, but ideally you want to stack your ongoing cards into 1 or 2 locations to have them elevated on the last turn with your Spectrum. Now, with Warrior Falls, if you drop a Colossus in the location, and that's the lowest power card, Colossus can't be destroyed. And so he's going to stay at the location. He's not going to get destroyed. And so then therefore you have kind of a stalemate at that location. And then similarly, if you drop armor, that is going to protect your cards at the location. And so then you can drop armor and not have to worry about dropping the rest of your cards in that lane to have them stacked so that you can buff them up with a Spectrum at the end of the game. Now, the next deck that I recommend is actually the one that we showcased yesterday. I'll leave a link to the gameplay for that one in the description below if you want to see how it's navigated and hear me talk about the deck in more detail. But we did make one tweak to the list. We took out Enchantress and we added in Moon Girl. So with the potential guaranteed trigger or destruction of our Sabretooth, I think we're going to more often than not be able to utilize something like a Moon Girl to double our Sabretooth, allowing us to have 2 of those free resources that we can drop on the board. Maybe we potentially do 2 Novas if it lines up just right. Maybe 2 Killmongers to throw them off. It gives us a little bit of flexibility. This is more of a kind of high roll. If you don't like the Moon Girl, if she doesn't feel great in that spot, then go ahead and put Enchantress back in so that you can counter some of the opponent's play. But otherwise, this list is going to benefit from throwing your cards into the location, intentionally letting them get destroyed. And so whether that be your Nova, whenever you want to trigger it across the board, you can throw this down on turn 5, on turn 6, and then the opponent's cards will fight. If that is your lowest power card, Nova will get destroyed and it will buff up all of the rest of your cards on the board. You can do something similar with your Bucky Barnes. That is going to get destroyed, bring out the Winter Soldier, and then if that is the highest power card, you can get some upside in potentially destroying their cards following that turn. But if this list is not working out for you, I'll refer to the link to the Spectrum deck list spotlight below, because that one I think should kind of hedge your bets. I think that should be consistent. Even if the opponent is running a destruction deck list, you can counter those, and then you can protect your cards with armor, with Colossus. Maybe you even change it out and add in a Cosmo to give yourself even more of a chance to counter destruction lists. Now, jumping into Pool 3, keep in mind that a lot of these decks worked well for the Embassy and a few of the other locations for similar reasons to why they're going to work here. And so with this list, we're running a Deadpool deck list. With a Deadpool deck list, we want our cards to be destroyed. If we can get the opponent to kill our Deadpool, that will start snowballing him. We don't run any kind of risk by throwing Deadpool into that location, because if he's the lowest power card, he just returns to our hand and he gets stronger. We can throw him back in that lane next turn, potentially taking out their resources. Or if he's the one that's destroyed, he comes back into our hand. stronger and better than ever. We can also throw the hood in this location with the intention that it gets destroyed. We have Bucky Barnes, similar to our previous destroy list, and all of these will work in unison or together to discount your death even further. That will allow you to do a wave into a cheap death and an additional card on 6, or you can do Deadpool and Taskmaster on 6. You have a lot of flexibility, especially if you're able to start snowballing with some of your 1-cost or low destruction cards in Warrior Falls. And then similar to our Warrior deck list, we have BAEro, and BAEro is going to get the same benefit that our Deadpool list does. This list wants to destroy at least 2 cards each game, that way it can drop death and an additional card on that final turn. If we can force the opponent into mispositioning their cards, maybe we pull a Dracula over into Warrior Falls with our Magneto. At 0 power, that is going to be the card that gets destroyed. You can do a couple of really cool and cheeky things with this list and redirecting their resources. And so our Hood, our Nova, our Yondu are all going to allow us to cheaply drop our death reliably each game. And then next up we have one of my favorite Black Panther decks, and this list is designed so that if you're afraid of playing into Warrior's Fall, with this list you don't have to. You can do the Electro into a Black Panther, into an Arnim Zola, into Odin to re-trigger Black Panther. You're going to be able to push a really large power or resource into that location so that you destroy their cards and not your own. And then you also have a big resource in Devil Dino. You can reposition or misposition their resources with BAEro. You just have a lot of potential upside with this location and this list, and you don't have to specifically play into that location. So if the opponent is playing Armor or Cosmo and they play it into the Warrior Falls location, this list benefits because you're not typically going to play in that location until you shift your cards over with an Arnim Zola, or maybe you push power wide with your Wong. And then I know I said we were only going to cover 5, but this is going to be a bonus list. If you are afraid of playing into Warrior's Fall, if you're getting outpowered or outmatched, your opponent's playing too high cost cards, or they're running counter cards so that you can't destroy your own cards, a Spectrum ongoing list is going to be your best friend. This list has your armor, it has Colossus to protect that lane. You can also do things like Professor X into the location to lock it down entirely. You can also just play away from the location and then on the last turn drop a big destroyer. You can buff up your cards with Spectrum. This gives you a lot of flexibility and protection in the location if it's not necessarily to your flavor, or you're finding that you get outmatched more often than you feel like you should. But that is my top 5, well, technically 6 deck recommendations to try out today. Figure out what's going to work best for you guys. Play around a little bit, see what you're matching up against, and then look at these, get some inspiration, maybe build your own lists, or maybe one of these will work perfectly for what you want to do. But either way, guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. And as always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.